Hey guys, another Jurassic World Alive video, and today we're gonna continue and go over the B+ tier list. So, going down the tier list, we're getting into some territory that is probably not so much endgame material anymore in terms of the dinos. A few of them here and there could potentially, maybe, if you play around with boost, maybe you could put them in an endgame team, but as always, when discussing the tier list, we're not putting into consideration about boosts at all. It's just vanilla, stats, level 26, all that stuff. So, anyways, let's get into B+ then. Starting with our first one. Is this alphabetical order? I think it is alphabetical order. That's great. So let's go alphabetically. Start with Alanka. Alanka is great. It has one of the best swap-in abilities in the game. Swap-in invincibility. Although I personally like swap-in distraction a bit more. But, they both have their upsides and downsides. Swamp invincibility, you could use it against stuff like Earldom. That's immune, huge damage, but obviously you can't use it against dinos that are gonna null you, that are gonna stun you. Not that distraction could, help with that either. Defense shatters, and then distraction you could obviously swap in against both, but you just can't swap in against folks who are probably gonna Superiority Strike, Cleanse, or have immune, right? So there's that. Alanka, just a great dino to swap in. A lot of bleed and swap strats work really well on Invincibility, Rampage, Superiority Strike. Great moveset overall. Lacks a bit in damage, but has that Rampage going for it, so there's that. Anyways, moving on to the Diplodocus. Diplodocus is great. The crazy health. 1.3k damage, not bad in that department either. Decelerating Rampage is a crazy move. You slow your opponent, only 1 turn cooldown, no delay, and obviously 2 times multiplier. Shield Advantage is a great move as well, especially if you're dealing with other dinos with shields. Usually works a bit well, or more well with dinos that only have shields without armors. The Diplodocus still has some difficulties eating through armor, despite its okay-ish base damage and that huge rampage move. It just doesn't have too much capabilities there. But, then again, it does have that shield advantage to help it destroy shields, and then also bypass armor, but it does have that 1 turn cooldown. But, it's not here to bust tanks. It's just here to take out the faster dinos that could try to screw with it. And, in general, it's just probably the best non-hybrid pure tank, build dino thing that we have in the game at the moment. Anyways, moving on to Dracorex Gen 2. Dracorex Gen 2, basically nothing really changed here. Swap in Rampage, Impact. They changed Swap in Shatter Rampage, Swap in Rampage. It doesn't really affect it too much. Although, if you're fighting more dinos down lower in the tier, unlike Dracoceratops, it does have to deal with a few more armored dinos than Dracoceratops, so it does kind of affect it a bit in that way. But then again, there's also a lot of dinos without armor that it really needs to come in and kill for that swap in as well. So Draco Gen 2 still around, still great. An impact and run into a swap and shatter rampage, or not shattering, just swap and rampage. Still a lot of damage. 2.4k, over priority, all that, your opponent can't see it coming, all that good stuff that comes with swap and rampage. Moving on, Aeneasukis. Aeneasukis used to be similar to Sarcoryxes, but Sarcoryxes just got way better this patch. It still does what it does. Ferocious Strike with a Ferocious boosted Greater Stunning Impact. That's huge damage. Obviously, Greater Stunning Impact still stuns. So there's that. Decel Strike is great for it as well. Overall, just okay-ish stats. 117 speed, not bad. 20% armor. Health could be a bit higher, but it's not terrible considering you still have that 20% armor and you have Adrenaline Pulse, which no one really uses, but it's an option in a pinch, I guess. And then 1.3k base damage, not terrible as well. Just a great overall, great budget dino, I'd say. Moving on to Maiasaura. Maiasaura is crazy because it has Instant Rampage, which is almost as good as Swap and Shattering Rampage. The problem with Maiasaura really is just its lower base damage, which isn't too much of a problem since it has 2 great multipliers as a Rampage and an Impact. Swap and Stun's great as well. Super clutch move. Superiority Strike, obviously one of the best moves in the game. A lot of health, okay-ish speed. Overall, great dino. Could have a bit better base damage, but then again, it has a lot of great multipliers, so I can let that one fly. Anyways, moving on, Potato Titan. So Potato Titan didn't necessarily get better, it's just that it's more suited for this meta, I guess, a bit more. Basically, the biggest problem with Potato Titan, as always, is still, like, dude doesn't do any damage. Dude's damage is really crappy. Base damage is low, has 1 impact, and that's about it for its multipliers. Does have that counter attack, which helps a lot, 250 more, but again, it's not helping too much in terms of its damage department. Overall, it's just decent at what it does, which is taking a lot of armor piercing defense shattering damage. So you got your shield up, 40% armor, which is great, and decent health. So there's that. Speed 108 kind of sucks, but you know, what can you do, right? Security Strike, great move as well. Bellow, great. Moving on to Rhinosaurus. Rhino, to get a slight nerf, not that big of a deal. Was it Dispatch for the last part? I can't remember, but you know, it's still around. Nothing really changed too much about it. Just a great dino overall. Base damage, pretty good. Health, really good. 114 speed. Could have been better, but it does have Security Strike, so that doesn't matter. Security Strike with a Rampage and an Impact, and that Rampage being greater, Stunning Rampage, one of the best moves in the game. Doesn't hurt it. Impact and Run, also great as well, if you could, you know, chain it in with a Maiasaura, Swap and Stun, or Dracorex 2, or a Pachycephalosaurus. That would be great, since Pachycephalosaurus does have Swap and Stun. It's also an B+ as well, a little similar to Rando. I'd say Rando's a bit better, but, you know, Pachy's not a terrible dino either. It just probably depends on how you use it. Might take a bit more damage than Rhino, a bit easier to kill, even though it does have Shielding Strike. But, you know, most of the time you probably don't want to use Shielding Strike turn 1, more so Decel Impact and then just Rampage Run into a good swap-in dino. That's basically Pachy's goal here, and it also gets affected by Distract a lot. 121 speed is great, obviously. 1.2k damage, not terrible. Just does a bit less damage than a Rhino, but it does have the swap in stun that a Rhino doesn't have, and the speed. So there's that as well. Moving on, Post-Metrodon. Post-Metrodon got screwed big time, so that's why it's all the way down here. But overall, it's still okay for what it does. Base damage is really low, which sucks. You'll basically just have to use it as a revenge killer, like just come in, Ferocious Strike, and then defend running everything. Even with that, it doesn't do that much damage. The biggest win about Post-Metrodon, obviously, is it's immune. The 124 speed, okay-ish health, and regen. 50% HP back with, you know, 4.2k, that's what, 2.1k back. That's a decent regen over there. Immunity obviously helps as well. Just take out those stunners, you know, bleeders, all that, distracting dinos. You know, it does its job still. Moving on to, I think this is our last unique, which is still the worst unique. Ludia changed this unique around a bunch of times. Doesn't seem to work still. Biggest problem, crappy damage. What, 2 impacts with 1k base, that's like nothing, especially with 129 speed and only 3,750 health. It's not as terrible as it used to be when it first came out, but like, what they're trying to do is pretty obvious. Just, they probably want us just to swap it in and then go swoop. Like, swap it in, distract, and then swoop. But the thing is, like, Homeboy has 3,750 HP. If you swap it in against a lot of the higher tier meta, you're gonna take a huge hit, and not good for it. Only has, again, 3,750 damage. Sure, you could use Distracting Impact the next turn, but you already took a big hit, and Distracting Impact, it's, you know, Superior Strike isn't that uncommon. Cleansing Impact's not that uncommon. Immune isn't that uncommon, and, well, Immune, why would you swap in wound to Immune anyways? But it still does what it does. I don't want to say it does it well, but there are ways to use it. Maybe use it as an opener. It's a decent opener. It has immune, 129 speed. You got it, distracting impact, null impact. Null impact is a terrible move to have on this dino, but you know, alas, what can you do, right? So there's that. Hey, a really good function, a really good use of this dino actually is to have it as a starter To open with this dino, if you have a dino that could really use a good setup like a Diplodocus or something, you know, lower your opponent's HP to really low so that you could one-shot it with your next dino coming in, be it Diplodocus, Stratronics, Earlodon, something that could use a good setup, and before you die, just throw in a pinning strike so they don't swap, right? So hey, there's a use for it. Anyways, moving on to Pyrrhitator, and by the way, the info on the field guide is, I think it's kind of wrong. I think Pyrrhitator now has defense shattering impact, but either way, it doesn't really affect it too much. Pyrrhitator, poor thing. What can we do with it, right? It obviously got worse this patch in terms of, you know, just the nerf on the crit for the most part. But hey, it still does what it does decently well. It could come in 129 speed, revenge kill, take out a dino, then you got Distracting Rampage up, and when you got Distracting Rampage up, that's a win for you. Distracting Rampage, obviously a really strong move with a really decent base damage, 129 speed. Even though the crappy health, you do have a Distracting Rampage ready at your hand, and even if you don't use it as a revenge killer, you still have Distraction turn 1, so you don't have to get absolutely bodied on turn 1 by a random opposing dino. So there's that as well. Moving on to Scaff. Scaff is just absolutely busted for just a non-hybrid rare. The health sucks, but what it does, and it just does what it does so well. Just come in, swap in wound, take a hit, regen, and you're still not dead. 128 speed, swoop away, you're gonna deal massive amounts of bleed damage, and then you could still swap it in for that extra 25% of your opponent's HP when you actually need it. And also Pinning Strike, that's not a terrible move as well if you're not taking too much damage and you want to make sure your opponent doesn't escape on the following turn. Just go for Pinning Strike instead, and then swoop out instead of regen and then swoop out, or you regen and then swoop out. It really depends on what you want to do there. It's a super versatile dino that's only a rare. So moving on, Sinoceratops. Sinoceratops is basically a Stegoceratops that's not a hybrid, and what that means is just basically it's kind of like a Stegoceratops, except it only has 3 moves instead of 4. So but it still does great. The only thing it doesn't have against Stegoceratops for the most part is the slowing impact, which it doesn't matter that much. It's obviously slowing impact is great in comparison to D-Cell Strike. Not so much its slowing ability. It's just because it's a solid 1.5 times that, you know, you could use and fits perfectly into Stegoceratops's cooldown cycle, which is why Sinoceratops is not Stegoceratops, not all the way up there, it's all the way down here, which is not terrible, you know, it just lacks that extra damage, that cooldown cycle that Stegoceratops has. And otherwise, just really solid stats and good moveset. One of the best non-hybrid dinos, if you're facing other non-hybrid dinos, folks who've participated in non-hybrid battles know exactly how terrifying Sinoceratops is. So there's that. Moving on to Smilodon. Smilodon is basically a raptor. So it's one of those, it's a weird raptor. It definitely got nerfed this patch. It's probably one of the weaker A+ or B+ dinos, honestly. It's like Smilodon and Wurzers is probably at the bottom of the list of the B+ dinos. But it's not terrible. 129 speed with almost 1.5k damage. You got precise pounce on turn 1. This is like pounce, it goes through cloak and evasion, so that's great. Even though cloak and evasion already got nerfed, and this is not as strong as a move as it used to be, but you know, it's still not bad to have. Prowl, the cleanse always helps. 50% chance to dodge 66 of direct damage. It's part of the evasive nerf, you know, can't do much about it, whatever. Increased critical chance by 50% for 1 turn, ugh. You know, ugh, that's terrible. Just because of the crit nerf as well. So Smilodon got affected a lot by this patch. But, you know, it's not terrible enough that it's gonna just fall off a cliff, so there's that. Anyways, moving on to Spinosaurus. Spinosaurus is actually, it's kind of comparable to Spinosaurus and Sucatator in a way. Spinosaurus is just in many sense, a faster and better Spinosaurus. It's almost better in every way, except for, I think Spinosaurus has like a bigger crit impact, I think is all, for the most part. And also, just obvious better moves, but just has, I think, basically the shorter end of the stick. In terms of stats, just because it's 126 speed, 126 speed, it's good and it's bad. It's slower than 128, 129, 131, but it's faster than 124 and, you know, the 117s, all that stuff, right? So it's in that weird position. Striking Rampage, obviously great. Move, Gashing Wound, kind of sucks, honestly, Gashing Wound. But the saving grace is you do have good damage options in Striking Rampage and Critical Impact, just in case your Gashing Wound doesn't take your opponent out, because unlike Spinosuchus' Lethal Wound is almost a guaranteed kill if your opponent doesn't swap out, cleanse it, or whatever, or shield your initial damage. But Gashing Wound is just not a guaranteed kill. It's just not in comparison, and that's why it has Striking Rampage and Critical Impact. Well, that's not maybe the only way. Striking Rampage is also to save it from dying too easily from its poor health and problematic speed. I won't say it's bad speed. 126 is still fast. It's just really problematic. Anyways, moving on to Stygimoloch. Stygimoloch's still decent, still where it is. Nothing really changed about it. 129 speed with 1.5k base damage. Shielding Strike, Impact, Run is a charge. Solid stats. And moveset. Health could be more desirable, but it does have Shielding Strikes, so turn 1 doesn't have to worry too much. And 129 speed, you could put up that shield before your opponent attacks you, and the next turn is a charge. Opponent can't do anything. Impact, Run, get out of here before you die, so you don't give your opponent a kill. All right, moving on to our last dino in B+, Wuerhosaurus. Wuerhosaurus, just overall a really solid dino. Probably one of the weaker ones on this list on B+. But it's just here because it just has overall just solid stats and a not terrible moveset. Well, you know, it's probably above average moveset. Anyways, 4.8k HP with 20% armor. That's really tanky stats. 1.4k base damage. That's in the Raptor range of base damage. 115 speed, not bad at all, and just its moves, you're gonna be faster than your opponent most of the time. Instant Distraction, great for, you know, just taking off a huge hit from your opponent, and then you could choose either Thago if your opponent doesn't have Distract, or Superior Strike if your opponent does have Distract, and then Thago next turn, and you'll still be faster, so it doesn't really matter. So anyways, that's gonna be it for B+ here. Overall, all decent dinos that could carry you to mid game, but if you really want to get higher than this, you probably do want to invest in some stronger dinos overall. So anyways, that's gonna be it for this list. And thank you guys for watching. Leave a like if you did enjoy it. Subscribe guys to the channel, and I will see you guys in the next one.